Let's get started. Welcome to week 8 of TD Culture Lab Artrepreneur 101. Tonight, we are going to learn about contracts and invoices. My name is Susan Durnin, and I'm the administration lead of the Mississauga Arts Council. This webinar is part of our TD Culture Lab professional development webinar series presented by Mississauga Arts Council and sponsored by TD Bank. So the Mississauga Arts Council is a registered charity dedicated to fostering the growth of the arts sector by cultivating creative opportunities and connections between artists and residents of Mississauga and beyond. MAC is dedicated to providing service-based programming to artists, funding artist-led programs, and growing awareness of the arts to build a vibrant and thriving cultural community. The Mississauga Arts Council acknowledges that the land on which we gather is part of the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron-Wendat, and Wyandot Nations. We are grateful to have this opportunity to work on the land and give our respect to these peoples and their ancestors who have been inhabitants and caretakers of this land since time immemorial. We also recognize that Mississauga is now home to many global Indigenous peoples. All right, so a little about me. My name's Susan Durnin. I'm the administration lead at the Mississauga Arts Council. In my previous life before the Mississauga Arts Council, I worked as an artist manager. We were booking concerts and planning tours for classical musicians across Canada and the US. And that's really where my sort of introduction to contracts and invoices and things like that started. And in my role with the Mississauga Arts Council as the administration lead, the office administrator, it's very much a part of my job. So hopefully I can help everyone out to understand what they are, what to watch for, and how to find good resources. So let's learn about contracts and invoices. Just gonna slide around here so I can see my slides better. All right, so today on our agenda, we're going to start by talking about contracts. So as I was saying, this workshop really starts with you have a gig. Wonderful. Someone's going to hire you for your art, for your music, for a film. Congratulations. We're so excited for you. Let's get you protected. So the first thing is a contract. What is in a contract? And then we're going to go over some standard contract clauses, what they're called, what they mean, what you should look for. And then I have an example of what I call a memorandum of agreement. So this is just really a one-page contract. It's not, sometimes contracts, I've seen festival contracts that are, 25 pages plus a schedule, a payment schedule, and an addendum, and all these other things. They're huge documents, but they don't need to be. It can be a simple one-pager that just sort of outlines what services, who's doing what. And so I'm going to show you a sample of that, and it's similar to what MAC uses for some of our agreements. Then after that, we're going to start talking about invoices. So the contract is, what are you going to do? How are you going to protect yourself? And then the invoice is, how are you going to get paid? So we're going to talk, what is an invoice? What information do you need to include on your invoice? And how do you make a good invoice? So what is a contract and why is it important? A contract is an agreement between two parties that outlines the duties and responsibilities of each. So a contract is a legally binding agreement, and it could be between multiple parties. Generally, it's between whoever's planning the event and the artist, or whoever's whoever's asking the visual artist to create art and the visual artist creating the art, for example. And in the document, it outlines the terms and conditions of the services or the exchange. It can be written. Written is nice. It's always good to have things in writing with signatures. It can also be verbal. Generally, there's sort of, the offer. What does someone want, or what are they asking for? There's acceptance of, yes, I agree with what's written. And then payment. So these are really essential for establishing clear expectations and obligations in a situation. Sorry for the end, from buying groceries to employment agreement. So I did not tailor this to arts, but at the same time, right? If, the grocery store says, this is how much your apples are going to cost, and you say, I agree with that. Those are nice apples. I will pay that amount. That is sort of a non-written agreement or contract. So in the arts world, why are contracts important? Well, It's a legal document that defines the expectations and it holds everyone accountable for their part of the project or the event. As an artist, it protects you if you do the services that are required of you and ensures that you get paid properly, the right amount, and that you're not exploited for your work. So these are really important documents to know about and to start to incorporate into your own practice. So what information is generally in a contract? So a contract, however many pages it might need to be, it will clearly outline the following. So number one, the details of the agreement. Who is involved? What is the nature of the agreement? When do the services take place? Where did the services take place? Why is this happening? So this can include the contact information for all the different parties. That's really important. How do you reach the other person? If it's an event, it'll include the venue information and the address. If it's a mural, it'll tell you what wall you're going to be painting. That's probably really important if you're going out into the world to do hand-painted mural, right? So it'll also outline what services are being provided and when are they happening. So that could be, again, when are you going to paint? When does the mural have to be done? When can you start painting? That's a really important window. Or, you're a musician, your band is going to be playing. When is the gig? Where is the gig, right? Those are all really important things that'll be detailed in a contract. The other important information is the date of services or the deadline. So again, in that mural example, you can start painting here, but we need the mural done by this date. Or in the example of performing arts, here's the date of the concert. It can't happen another date, it has to happen then. So another part of the contract will be the payment schedule. What is the payment date? So are you getting paid before you perform your services? Are you getting paid after? Are they handing you a check at the gig? That's all important information that'll be in the contract. And then it'll also outline, do you need to provide an invoice to the other person to get paid? Or is this contract enough to get paid? Depends on the organization. And then the rest of the contract will be sort of the terms and conditions. So it can be, as I was saying, it could be a simple one-page document. It could be a huge long manual. It'll outline all of the information above, and then it'll include other terms. Cancellation. What happens if you need to back out? What happens if they need to back out, right? Maybe the funding has fallen through and the mural isn't going to happen, or it's an outdoor event and it's going to rain. All of that should be outlined in the contract. So yeah, sending a contract can feel a little bit icky. It feels like you're maybe breaking trust with someone that you've been working with for a while, but you can always say, my accountant's asking for extra paperwork, or, I'm just trying to formalize things a little bit and make sure I have the right paperwork for all of my things. And you can make it, again, if you use that one-page document, something really simple that just outlines some basic terms. It's a way to protect yourself, but it also, then the person on the other side will kind of say, oh yeah, that's no problem. I'm happy to read through it and sign it. And as long as you keep things nice and small, it's just a way to get things started, to have the paperwork you need to make sure that you're going to get paid, that you know what you need to do for each project. So don't be afraid of talking to people who are hiring you to make sure that you're getting what you need. All right, so some contracts are big and long and crazy, and there's a whole bunch of weird lawyer speak that probably feels a lot. Believe me, when I first started reading contracts, it just kind of sounded like jargon. And my boss was laughing at me because the entire first page of a contract, which is laying out who the parties are and what's happening, is technically all one sentence. There's no punctuation until you get to the end where it says, and we will pay you this much, period. And it's like an entire one-page document that's one sentence, laid out differently. But yeah, so it can be a little overwhelming, but take your time. When you get a contract from someone, take your time to go through it and make sure you know what is being asked of you and what your rights are. So some of the clauses you might find, right? It'll lay out all of that information, and then it gets into these little fiddly things. So services. This clause It'll outline what the expectation is. So, at the Mississauga Arts Council, sometimes we have artists present workshops like this one. And so in the services clause, we're going to explain what the webinar is and when they need to show up to test their slideshow, and the fact that they need a PowerPoint presentation, and all that would be in the services clause. If you're a musician, it'll explain what they're asking you to do. Is it a 1 hour set? Is it a 2 hour show with an intermission? How long is that intermission? Things like that. Or if it's a mural, where is the mural? How big is the mural? Is it hand painted? Is it digitally designed? It'll have all of that information laid out for you. So that's a really important one that says, here's what we want you to do. What's the expectation? Another clause, the payment schedule. So this one's going to outline how much you're getting paid. Are you getting paid a deposit and a balance? Is it all just one payment after you're done? Like I was saying before, are they handing you a check backstage at your concert, or are they paying you, you finish the concert and they're paying you the next week? Those sorts of things will be outlined there. And any other requirements. Do you need to send them an invoice to get paid? Or do you need to send them your direct deposit information? Things like that. So read that one, make sure you know what it's about. Then there's always a clause about cancellation or termination of contract, depending on the language. So this clause is going to explain what happens if you need to cancel and what happens if they need to cancel. So again, maybe you've signed the contract, but then their funder pulls out of their festival and they don't have a festival anymore. So how many days in advance are they allowed to cancel without paying you? There's an important one. And how many, if it rains and they cancel that day, do you still get half your payment? Those sorts of things will be there. And things happen. Sometimes you do have to cancel, and that's okay. And it'll give you sort of a time frame of when you can cancel without penalty and when you cancel with some sort of penalty, whether it's you still get paid as an artist if they cancel, or if they've paid you a deposit, maybe they get their deposit back because you had to cancel. It'll all be spelled out in that one. Another interesting one, and this is more something that musicians might find, and that's an exclusivity clause. So this clause, it basically will prohibit the musician from performing within a certain distance. Normally it's a 50-kilometer radius within a certain time period. So I've seen anywhere from 3 months before the event, or 3 months either side of the event, to 6 months on either side of the event. So a whole year or 6 months before the concert where you're not allowed to perform within a 50-kilometer radius, which if you're a local musician, that's going to be a problem. But if you're a touring musician and you get this gig out in BC and it's part of a tour of Alberta you're doing, great. Who cares? You're going up there once for one show. Amazing. But that's something to watch out for. And basically why they would ask for this is if you're a big name and you're a draw, then they don't want you to perform at 3 other locations where the audience could go see you at all these other locations, and then their ticket sales go down. So that's where they're coming from. So it makes sense. But as a local musician, or if you already have a few things planned, if you're touring and someone tries to throw some exclusivity, you can talk to them and say, I'm touring and I have these ones already booked. Can we work something out? Anything in a contract, you can always negotiate. You can always go back and ask them questions. It's totally fine. But they're things you need to know. Another clause you might see, and again, this is maybe more for visual artists, and that's a copyright or ownership clause. So for example, as a visual artist, do you retain the rights of your work if somebody commissions a work from you, or do they now own it? If you put a mural up, can you then reproduce that artwork as, if it's a digital mural, can then you use that digital print to create postcards or to create prints that you can sell beyond? If they get the work, are they allowed to reproduce it anywhere? So that clause is an important one for your work, and something to, again, to read the fine print and try and figure out what they're saying. So a couple more, recording and broadcasting. If you're doing an event, are they allowed to record your performance? And if so, can they broadcast it for money? Can they put it on YouTube for free? If they record it, is it just for archival purposes? Or can they use maybe a 30-second clip of your performance for promotional purposes, right? For their festival next year, a 30-second clip of you performing for a social media reel. So the recording broadcasting will keep track of all of that. And again, make sure you're protected. Don't let them video you and use it for free forever. Make sure that you're protected in that too. So I was actually laughing as I wrote this next one, the force majeure, or the act of God clause, if you will. So this one is, again, it's sort of a cancellation clause, but this one is sort of saying, you know, if there's an extraordinary event, if a hurricane comes through and we can't have our event because there's a hurricane, if there's a war, if there's, oh, remember something called COVID-19 and it shut the world down? Right. So we all sort of hit that force majeure because of an epidemic, and a lot of things were canceled in 2020 and 2021. And as I was typing this, I was laughing because we just had the Air Canada flight attendant strike, which shut down a bunch of flights. And if you were flying on Air Canada for a concert and now your flight isn't going, that would be part of this force majeure. You literally cannot get to where you need to be for your concert, and it's not your fault. It's not the presenter's fault. So that's what this clause is all about. And it'll spell out different things that, you know, it cancels, no bad feelings, sorry it didn't work, and we'll try and figure it out. Like maybe we can do it next year. Maybe we can find another date for this thing outside of the pandemic, outside of an airline strike. And that'll spell that out. And then so we have all of these clauses, and then sometimes too, you might see an addendum or a schedule or an appendix. For musicians, you might also see riders, stage plotter, technical rider. So these are additional documents that get added onto the body of a contract that spell out specific information about this project we're doing. So maybe in the case of a rider, it's specific to your band. This is our stage plot. This is what we need from the venue to be able to perform. Or it could be sometimes a presenter or someone giving you the contract, they'll make a really simple 1 or 2 page contract, and then they'll have all of these sort of, the payment schedule. And the contract will be really basic, all the same information for everyone. For example, a music festival, they might have a 2-page contract. Here's what we expect of you. And then the first schedule would be payment for your specific performance. And then it'll be your rider. And then it'll be, some other specific things to your performance, your workshops, your activities that will change after, which is easier for them just to kind of say, here's the contract, add that, send. But all of these are part of that contract, and it's just other ways of sort of laying things out. That was a lot. Don't worry. It'll be okay. So next up, a sample MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, or MOA, Memorandum of Agreement. Interchangeable terms. I'm sure the lawyers will tell you that they are not. But I wanted to draw up an example of what just a really basic contract could look like. I had to split my page this way for the presentation. So this would be the top of the page. So we have today's date. We have information about in this case, it's the super awesome example concert that's going to be taking place on September 13th. The concert's at 7:30 with a sound check at 4 p.m. Musicians know that's important. You get your stage set up, you do your sound check, you go for dinner, and then you play your concert. Where is it? The Studio Theater at Living Arts Center, the address of the Living Arts Center. And in here, I also have a ticket price and a link to get tickets, which, we will find out that that Jane Doe and the Bucks, as our performer, isn't necessarily in charge of selling tickets, but that way they can share on social and they know what's going on. So then after our sort of event information up at the top here, then we get the producer's contact information. So Joe Smith with his email and phone, and then the artist name, it's Jane Doe and the Bucks, and we have her contact information as well. And then payment to artist. So they're getting Jane Doe and her band, they're getting a flat fee with HST if appropriate. So that's sort of the top, just outlining everything about the concert that we need to know. If you just glance at that, you go, okay, everything you need to know about the concert, maybe not all the details, but all of the who, what, when, where, why, how much, how many is all there. And then in addition to sort of the concert info, then we get a little description about the event, what's going on. So the band is going to be playing a 2-hour musical set with an intermission from 7:30 to 10. So it looks like maybe a 20 or 30-minute intermission. How many audience members can come? That's an important piece of information so that the band can kind of plan. Jane Doe and the Bucks will receive a guaranteed fee. So that's that $2,500 artist fee. And Joe Smith will receive all proceeds from the door. So any of the extra ticket sales, they're not going to the band, they're going to the producer. So then we go into who's going to do what. So the event producer is running all aspects of the concert, incurring all expenses. They're creating and sharing marketing materials. They're paying the artist a flat rate, and they're supplying all backline and technical equipment. So backline for musicians could be a drum set. It could be amps, microphones, all that kind of thing. And then it outlines what the artist is going to do. So the artist will provide marketing assets. So that's photo, bio, things like that to help promote the concert. They'll assist in concert promotion. So maybe some social media shares, maybe creating a reel that the producer can use to help advertise the show. They're going to perform, oops, I have a typo here. It's actually a 2-hour set. I changed that. And so it outlines who's doing what for this concert. And then I didn't have room for the signatures, but at the bottom there it says that both parties agree and both would sign. And then this becomes a legal contract. So that's just a really basic one, which has all the information you need to feel confident that this event can take place. It's a lot, don't worry. So best practices and tips. Start simple. That 1-page memorandum of agreement that I just showed you, it's a great start. It outlines the project. It clearly states the expectations. And even if you just use that as a start for negotiations or, to give it to the other person and say, here's what I think is going on. Do you have anything to add to this? It's a really great start and just helps to sort of define the terms. If you're given a contract by someone else, read the terms carefully. Even if it's full of lawyer type language, take your time reading it and be careful, because if they send you a contract, they're trying to protect themselves. So make sure that you're satisfied with the terms before you sign. And if you're not, go back to them and ask questions. This is an interesting one I learned early on. Don't delete anything. If someone sends you a contract and there's a clause that you do not agree with, don't delete it. Don't cross it out. Don't use whiteout. Sorry, you can cross it out. Don't use whiteout. Don't delete it. Strike through, put lines through it, and then initial it. And have them initial it as well. So both parties agree that that's not going to be part of the contract. You can also go back to them and ask them to send you a new version without that. But that was an interesting fun fact I learned at one point. Riders are common for musicians. Performance contracts, it includes, the stage plot, where the musician's standing on stage, the backline list, what kind of plugins. Is it a microphone? Is it a guitar going into a little box or going into an amp? Other important details. Make sure you know what equipment, what equipment you need to bring to your next gig. Do you need to bring everything, or are they supplying a drum kit and all you need to do is bring your guitars or your amps? So that's something important in a rider. And then finally here, don't be afraid to ask or send for one. As I was saying before, it can feel a little awkward if you're asking someone for a contract or sending someone a contract, but don't worry. All you're trying to do is clarify things and make things make sense to both parties. Sort of say, here's my understanding of what's going on. Is this what you agree with as well? Both parties sign, everyone's on the same page. It actually is better. It clears the air. There's no questions. And so don't be afraid to ask. All right. So that was contracts. I know that was a lot, but it's also important information and important to protect yourself. So you got your gig, you signed your contract, the gig, the gig has happened, you've done the services. Now you have to get paid. So what is an invoice? It's a detailed document requesting payment for goods or services. It's a record of the transaction. It outlines what items or services. If you're a visual artist, maybe the details of the paintings that you sold. If you are a musician, the services, maybe it was a performance or something like that. As a writer, maybe you were doing editing for someone or copywriting. So it'll outline all of that information, whether it's services, items, things like that. It also outlines the prices or the rate per hour that you're charging and any payment terms. Payment terms being, how do you pay me? When do you pay me? So essentially, it's a bill that the seller would send to a buyer to ask for payment. Why are invoices important? Invoices are crucial for you to get paid promptly and accurately, and they serve as a legal documentation for transactions. They also help in accounting, tax reporting, and auditing purposes. So when the CRA says, oh, I noticed that you claimed this much in artist income last year, prove it. You have your invoices and you can say, here you go, everyone paid up. An invoice is not a receipt. So, when you buy your groceries and you get your receipt, that's great. It shows you what you bought. Wonderful. And that's a good read, important. But an invoice is actually more detailed than that and shows the services and everything that's going to be there, not just that the payment took place. Hopefully that made sense. Okay, so let's break down an invoice. What do you need to include in your invoice? So the key elements, an invoice typically includes the seller or artist's contact information, your name, how to contact you, the buyer's contact information, who are you asking to pay you, get their information. It'll have a date and often a number for tracking purposes. Susan's hot tip, I always start my invoice numbers with the current year. So right now it would be 2025-001 would be the first invoice I send in 2025. And then the second invoice will be 2025-002, and it will count up from there. It's a great way of keeping track not only of invoice numbers, but also what tax year they're part of. So that's my hot tip for everyone. Start with the year, dash, and then the number of the 3 digits in case you send more than 100 every year. But if you're only sending a few every year, maybe it's just 2025-01. Totally up to you. And you can number them whatever you want. If you have accounting software that you use as an artist, it might number them some other way, and that's totally fine. But yeah, a number for tracking invoice date. Then it'll have a detailed description of the goods and services. So artist name, the venue, the type of work, the date that you did the work, the hours you worked, all that sort of information. The more information, the better. It'll have the total amounts for each item with a breakdown of quantities. So total amounts for each item. So maybe it's, hand on-site mural painting, 3 hours times $40 an hour equals total amount. So you're kind of breaking it down to show how much you're charging and how much you're charging per hour, how many hours type thing. If you have an HST number, make sure to include the HST number on your invoice with the breakdown of tax. If you do not have an HST number, you can ignore that point entirely until you get one. And then the final piece is payment terms. So that is payment due upon receipt of the invoice. Is payment due upon completion of work? Is there a deposit due now and a balance later? Or here's my invoice, pay me in 2 weeks, that's fine, right? All of that information can be on your invoice as well. And I say here, the more detailed your invoice, the better. Accountants love details. And the more information you have, in our case here at Mac, we get the invoices, we collect them, we go through, we make sure everything's right. But then they go to our accountant who doesn't know that John Smith just played a concert for us and what that concert was for. So the more information we have in the invoice, the easier it is for everyone to know exactly what that is, what it was for, and make sure that you get paid promptly. All right. So I had a little bit of fun and I created a sample invoice that has tons of information and then a sample invoice that's maybe not what you should be sending out. And so this is our sample invoice A, which is really lovely. Remember that Jane Doe and the Bucks concert? Well, here it is. They changed their name because halfway through a presentation, that's exactly what Susan likes to do, is change the band name. But here is their, here's a sample invoice for what Jane Doe is sending to her customers. So up at the top here, we have her name, we have her address, her email, her phone number, all of her contact information. We have an invoice date, today's date. We have an invoice number in Susan's fun little format. It also says invoice on it. I know that sounds silly, but include the word invoice on your invoice. Why not? That way we know what it's for, what type of document it is. And over here on this side, we have the invoices to the Mississauga Arts Council. So Jane Doe is asking the Mississauga Arts Council to pay her for her services. And we also have, my contact information is included here because I've been working with her and she wants me to get the invoice and deal with it. Great. Then here we have in the middle, we have a description of what we're paying her for. So the first item is an artist fee for a music performance by her band at our TD Culture Lab on August 26th, and where the venue is, where she's going to be performing. We have the amount here. And on the side, I have a little H, meaning it gets charged HST. The second line we have here is travel reimbursement. So we've split out the artist fee is one line and travel reimbursement is a separate item. The more the more we can separate these out, the better, because in the case of Mac, our artist fees and our travel reimbursements get put on different lines for accounting purposes when it goes to our accountant. So keeping everything really separated is actually a good thing. So here we have travel reimbursement. It's just a $50 flat fee. And here you'll notice we have E. E means exempt. So she's not charging HST on her travel. It's just a flat $50. So here we can see a subtotal. So $1,000 artist fee plus $50 travel is $1,050. She's charging HST on the 1,000. So HST in Ontario is 13%. 13% of $1,000 is $130. And then we have our total, which is 1,000 plus 50 plus $130 for a total. That's math. Don't worry. Take your time on that one, and I can always help with that offline. And then here it says payment due on receipt. So those are the payment terms I've been talking about. We also have make check payable to Jane Doe or pay by e-transfer to her email. So she's given us 2 ways to pay her, told us when to pay her, and right down here at the bottom, we have her HST number. So that's a pretty detailed invoice. It has everything we need to know and more, which is great. So I've come up with a sample invoice B. You're allowed to laugh. It's great. Can you see the difference? So one is really detailed. We've broken things out. We've really explained things. And then in the second one, we don't have a mailing address. We don't have a phone number. We kind of know who it's to, but we don't have their information. They've combined the artist fee and the travel reimbursement. And oh, look, we have a typo, don't we? We do. We're being charged HST, but is there an HST number on this invoice? I don't see one. We don't have payment terms. Do we know who we're paying? Do we know how to pay them? Do we know when to pay them? None of that's on here. So yes, technically invoice B is an invoice, but it doesn't have enough details for us to be able to process payment for Jane Doe. So we kind of went over what's missing in sample invoice B, and I'll just take a minute to kind of let these sink in. So, I mean, there are big differences between tons of information, really clear, easy yes, and, in the case of sample invoice B, the organization is going to go back to Jane and say, oh, I need a few more details. Can you add this and this and this? And it's going to take longer for her to get paid properly. Okay, so invoicing best practices and tips. More info is a good thing, as we just saw with those samples. Include as many details as possible, describe things really well, make it easy for the customer to be like, oh, I know exactly what that is, pay, pay, pay. Break things down, including different types of payments on different lines, the way we did with the artist fee and the travel being different. It makes it easy to understand. It helps your customer when they're doing their own accounting. And it just makes things so nice and clear to have all of these items and then total at the bottom. Do you collect HST? If you need to learn about it, I have a link here where you can learn all about HST. This is something through the Canada Revenue Agency. I believe it's if you make $30,000 a year through your business income that you'll have to get an HST number and start collecting and paying HST. HST is not free money. It's money that you collect on behalf of the government, and then you have to pay back to the government once or twice a year, depending on your HST schedule. It's a little extra paperwork, but if you do get an HST number, congratulations. It means you're making lots of money. Good for you. And you can use this link here to learn more about it if it's something that you think you might be getting close to. All right, a couple of resources to finish up today. I did not include contract resources. If you are looking for contracts, I do have that sample memorandum of agreement earlier in the slides. You're welcome to steal that format. The trick for a good contract is if someone sends you a contract and you go, oh, I like this, just file it away as a template somewhere. Other people have probably done it well. And if you really, if there's clauses you like, steal them and make them your own. To be able to put your things together. There are probably great contracts out there. You probably have friends who have seen great contracts or use great contracts. Use your resources and see what's out there. But like I said, that MOA example, you can absolutely use that. For invoices though, there are lots of resources available. So every word processor, so that could be Microsoft Word, the Apple program Pages, Google Docs, all of them have an invoice template that you can just open up and start changing the information. So in any of these programs, if you go to File, New, Open from Template or Use Template, and then you can search for an invoice template, find one you like and open it, and you're good to go. If there's things in there, it might be more complicated than you need. You can always delete things. You can always leave, sort of erase things. And once you get it to what you need it to be, save that template for yourself. The other end too, if you're growing your business and you're looking to use accounting software, something like QuickBooks Online, which I think is pretty reasonable. It's maybe $5 a month for small businesses that just need basics. And any of that accounting software will have invoice templates. And in the software, you can just hit send. I get a lot from Wave apps. In my day-to-day business, that's a popular one. And there's a few other sort of accounting software that will produce invoices for you. So all of those are resources for you. And I've also added a link here. This is called Susan's Awesome Invoice Template. It is a sample of the Jane Doe invoice, sample invoice number A, letter A, that I showed earlier in the presentation. And if you click this link, it'll prompt you to save a copy or download a copy. And you're welcome to use that and turn it into your own template. So there's a few resources. Thank you so much for being a part of this. And let's get on with some questions. We've had a long presentation of Susan chatting, so